So welcome to CDB 306, Modern Device Management with Windows Intune. I'll do a couple of quick intros. First off, Robbie.
I'm Robbie. I'm a group program manager for the mobile device management of Windows Intune.
And I'm Craig Marl. I'm a PM lead on the Windows Intune team, and my team mostly deals with user experience and some of the information worker features that we've been enabling now in our, I have to force myself to say pre-release of the latest version of Windows Intune. If you hear me slip and say something like Wave C, that's the kind of the internal way we've referred to it, so you'll pardon my mistake there. So in terms of what we're going to cover today, I want to give you guys a quick, very quick, brief recap of what Windows Intune is for those of folks that aren't super familiar. And then we're going to dive into really what the features are that we're enabling for modern device management in Windows Intune. And before we get into that, some of the thinking and some of the vision and how we arrived where we actually arrived. And then plenty of time left open for Q&A for you guys to ask whatever questions you've got. How many folks attended Kim and Dilip's session earlier on this morning? Okay, so a good number. So hopefully this won't be too boring for you. So a quick recap of what Windows Intune is. Really, our goal when we set out to build Windows Intune was to have this sort of very simple yet very powerful management as a service from the cloud. We wanted to make sure it was a simple web-based console. Our first goals really were protect and patch PCs from the standpoint of antivirus, software updates, do inventory. We've extended this over time to provide, things like proactive monitoring with alerts. The latest release has things like push software distribution, remote assistance, and of course, all the usual stuff that you need to sort of be able to track licenses and reconcile things across your organization. And really, there's some good reporting pieces in there so you can get good insight into what your machines are doing in your environment. But really, all this sort of boils down to this one overriding principle of enabling flexible work styles. Right? We really set out to go build a product that meant that users could be managed wherever they are, because the days of people being stuck in an office building seem to be fairly numbered. And as an IT pro and as an administrator, it's pretty unlikely you're going to be working 8 hours a day in your little cubicle in your office somewhere, right? Does anybody actually do that? Anybody only work 8 hours, just sit at a desk all day? Excellent. We should talk later because I would love your job. There's probably some other guys here who would like it too. So really that's kind of, what we actually built is underpinned by this sort of big vision, right? And no presentation is really complete without some kind of vision statement. And really our vision for Windows Intune is to deliver this, the best Windows experience, embrace these upcoming consumerization trends with enterprise class management. Now I'll reiterate that enterprise class management. I think there's a fair amount of confusion, and some of that has been, our positioning, and as we've evolved over time. I think a lot of people think of Windows Intune as, it's a great little tool for small and medium businesses, but it doesn't really apply to me. That's not the case, right? It really is an enterprise class tool. And so you should definitely be thinking of it in that way, and especially more so as we go forward. And this vision's kind of underpinned by really sort of 4 pillars. The flexible work style, right? We want to enable this flexible work style so that people can work from anywhere. And this is not just because we think, it'd be cool if Josh Pointer could work at home in his underwear. Nobody really cares except maybe Josh. But it's really about making sure that you can actually map the business services to the things that people do and the way people want to work. I mean, there's a huge amount of business value in enabling people to check stuff on their cell phones and check stuff on their iPads, right? Probably half the room is doing that right now. Exactly. And if you think about it from a business standpoint, right, you can now eke out, you can pay somebody for doing 8 hours of work, and you can actually force them to go do 12, 14 hours of work, right, because they're going to be checking their phones, they'll be checking their iPads, they feel this always connectedness, and that's going to be a huge productivity gain for people. And as you see, especially I think a lot of the new generation of people coming into the workforce, they're going to expect that flexibility. They're going to expect to be able to work anywhere, anytime, any place, and on any device that they actually want to use. Now the second pillar really is this, and I have to thank, is Nilesh in the audience anywhere? No? A fellow on our team, Nilesh, pointed out in the early version of this slide that we actually had complement to SCCM, which of course I would always compliment SCCM. It's a beautiful product. But in this case, we're not thinking about, saying kudos to the SCCM team, but it's really about thinking about Windows Intune as a part of your overall management strategy, right? So don't think of it as do I use SCCM or do I use Intune? Use both, right? There's places where both products really shine, and there's places where both products are probably limited, right? But that set kind of overlaps, and over time, our vision is to bring those things closer and closer together so that you don't have to think about it. You can use the tools that work best for you in the best scenario. Classic examples we hear of are acquisitions, right? If you've just acquired a company, it's got no management anywhere, it's a snap to throw in Windows Intune in that branch office or that small company and get it under management, get insight into it, and find out what's going on without having to roll it into your SCCM deployment. And you can bring it in on time, whenever you want. Third pillar, obviously, ties in with the name quite nicely, the latest in Windows. We want to bring you these latest abilities that you get in the newer version of Windows. So you get enterprise rights for the enterprise versions of Windows. And this means you get the latest technology like BitLocker and branch cache. You get all the latest advantages of the newer operating systems. And as Windows evolves more and more over time, you really see more and more management capabilities within Windows. So we want to enable you to actually sort of roll that out faster. And talking about fast, really probably one of the most important principles, I think, for the whole team has been this rapid release cycle. It's kind of funny. I originally started at Microsoft working on Windows. And I confess I actually worked on roaming user profiles for a while. So there's probably a lot of people got some experience of that. But I had this experience then where you'd talk to customers and we'd say, oh, I want feature X. And I'd say, yeah, it's great, fantastic. Come talk to me in 3 years when we ship the next release of Windows. And that's horrible as a product team because you know the problem, you want to fix that problem. Now think about Windows Intune. We shipped our first release a year ago, focused on those basics of patch and protect. And then we waited a whole 6 months before we gave you push software distribution and a whole bunch of other features. And now, another lengthy 6 months later, we're adding Active Directory integration, modern mobile device management, a whole raft of things, end-user pull of software. That's just in the last year, right? And so we want to keep on that activity and keep on that cycle of shipping things fast and making it really easy for you to just consume it, right? We really want to make it such that not only is the consumerization of IT from a user standpoint, it's also from an IT pro standpoint. I can just use this stuff. It's just there. I don't have to think about it too hard. And those rapid release cycles really help us look at some of these emerging trends and actually deliver features and products that enable you to solve those problems more quickly. And there's probably no bigger trend right now than the consumerization of IT. Probably the most overused phrase other than cloud. Number of buzzwords, COIT, which always sounds like it shouldn't be something you say in public. BYOD, there's a whole different ways of talking about it. But the reality is that, last year for the first time, we see smartphones exceed the number of PCs. And that was a huge shift, right? And you've seen this growth in enterprise deployments especially, and this is really being driven, a lot of it, in fairness to Apple, was being driven by iPhone, right? They've got this cool technology. It's not so cool compared to Windows Phone, but they've got this cool technology that people really wanted. And people really wanted to sort of bring that in and bring that into their work environment. And this is the same kind of pattern. I wasn't around then, but this is the same kind of pattern that you could imagine happened back in the day when originally it was all mainframes and IT controlled everything. And you start to see users saying, wait, for only $10,000, I can go buy this little, 286 PC and I can do my spreadsheets. But that's how it kind of seeped into the enterprises back then. And you see, as these devices start to come in, a majority of them are really owned by that end user, right? They're not corporate devices. How many people here have a smartphone, modern device, anything like that? Pretty much everybody. How many of you actually own your own device? Right, so it's a good, 50%, I would say. I'm the same way. I have my own phone. God forbid I shouldn't say this. I have a MacBook Air that I use for work. That gets me some funny looks. And you get more and more multiple devices. The days of sort of being this one user, one device are gone, right? And of course, this brings with it a lot of benefits for productivity and users, but it also brings, there's always a downside to everything. And you get this interesting mix now of your personal information, your work information, and that line is blending between the two. In much the same way the work pattern is, that data blends in the same way. And so that means from an IT standpoint, those lost devices, if it was Bob from housekeeping lost his phone, I could care less, right? If Bob from HR lost his phone, and I realize he's got 10,000 social security numbers on there, that's a whole different ballgame now, right? And then along with that, you're seeing the shift to always being connected, right? So people are always expecting this kind of cloud connection. I don't want to have to RAS in, I don't have to use a VPN network. And so this kind of, this trend of consumerization really kind of forced us to focus, at least for this new release, on these three big areas. User-centric. Has to be user-centric because it's not a one-to-one mapping between a user and device. And the way you're thinking about managing things is really about, okay, what does Robbie need? What's Robbie's needs for his business? And I know that now underneath Robbie, there are half a dozen different devices. But he's a nice abstraction that I can get my head around and target that will allow me to get to those devices. There's a self-service aspect too. As you see, people start to use their own phones and own mobile devices, app stores. Folks are used to that sort of helping themselves to stuff. They're used to that, instant gratification. I want to watch a movie, I go to Netflix. I want to go an app, I go to the App Store or the Marketplace. And that's going to change and say, okay, I want to go work on a spreadsheet, or I want to go work on, file my expenses. Oh, wait, I've got to send off a request to IT and wait for it? No, they're not going to wait for it, right? They expect to be able to help themselves. And they're getting a lot more sophisticated about helping themselves. Not all of them, granted, but some. And then these modern devices also bring in, a whole set of challenges of their own. Everything from tablets, phones, they're always connected. There's this mix of kind of, corporate and personally owned devices. So those were kind of the three big areas we were thinking about as we started to go into the planning for this release. And now Robbie has a lot of experience and a lot of insight into, especially around the mobile space. So he's going to talk to you now about the specific challenges of mobile and talk to you about the details of exactly what we're going to do for the upcoming pre-release.
Yeah, great. So hi, everybody. About 6 months ago, before we started planning the release of the product that we're just launching today, we discussed a lot with a lot of customers. We read reports, we met a lot of people, and we tried to focus and to understand what are the real challenges that we should confront with in planning this product. And actually, I think that the challenges can be actually summarized in 4 major issues. It's discovery, and inventory management goes there. It's protection of corporate data. It's remediation if something goes wrong with the devices that we're managing. And of course, pleasing the IW, pleasing the end user. I think that the most evident trend of the consumerization that Craig has just talked about is that users are becoming a very important pillar in our offering. And you guys as IT admins, we as vendors, we need to think about how we are pleasing our customers, how we are pleasing our end users. So taking those 4 pillars and translating them into challenges and later on into a set of features that we brought into the product, I think that the main challenges were that devices are widely heterogeneous. In a sense, and Craig has talked about it, users are buying their own devices. I mean, half of all the smartphones in North America, this is a recent research that was published, are not company-owned, but are rather user-owned. So there's no one dominant mobile operating system that those devices are using. We have Windows Phone, we have Androids, we have iPhones, we have Symbian to some extent in Western Europe, we have BlackBerry. We need to cater for all of those. It's pretty hard for an IT admin or for an organization to get a single view of all the mobile devices that are coming into the organization and the PCs that one needs to manage in the same organization. So this is the first challenge that goes into the discovery and the inventory management. Second issue is the protection and remediation. As users are bringing their devices into the corporate environment, IT pros need to make sure that sensitive corporate information is being protected. and we need to cater for that. The IT pro, or the admin, needs to balance between the wish of the end users to use their own devices and to protect the data. Frankly, the issue of having multiple devices is not a very pleasant thing for the end user. End users might have a PC, end users might have a laptop, end users are buying a phone, some of them may have a slate. Too many devices, too many operating systems. We have to simplify this for the admin and for the end user, managing those devices. And last but not least, pleasing the end user. Users are expecting to have a very familiar experience in terms of consuming and using content. This trend of consuming content, downloading application, has been driven a lot by the recent consumerization trends. People are used to consume application, they are used to download application, and we need to cater in the corporate environment for a similar experience. So looking at those challenges and designing the product release that we're launching today, we actually defined a set of feature families that address exactly those challenges that I was mentioning. We have a set of features that address discovery and inventory management, for PCs and mobile devices management, a set of features that are aiming at protection of the corporate data through policies deployment, and a set of remediation features that can take care of any mishappen that can occur when people are bringing their own device into the corporate environment. And of course, empowering the IW to download applications, to use those applications, and choose whatever application will make the information worker as productive as possible. So I'll go a little bit deeper into the logical architecture that we have implemented in our product release in order to make this feature set happen in our product. So first of all, and those of you who were in Dilip's and Kim's presentation this morning have seen a similar slide, but for those of you who are not there, I'm going to repeat it a bit. I'm not going to go too deep into this because I want to get to the demos. We prepared for you a set of pretty extensive demos. So essentially, we are using the set of user identities that are part of the Active Directory that's sitting on the enterprise premise. We're syncing those identities into our Microsoft Cloud infrastructure, which part of you might know as MSODS, Microsoft Online Directory Services. So once those users, including their identities and details, are synced into the Microsoft Cloud, Windows Intune pulls those users into its databases. And then we need to sync to those users, we need to sync their devices. We need to create the affinity between the devices and the users. So creating this affinity between the users and the devices is done through the Exchange server. So actually, we would have an Exchange connector installed on the enterprise premise. This Exchange connector would, on one hand, connect to the Exchange server, and on the other hand, is going to create a partnership with Intune. And through this partnership, we are going to collect the information for the devices that are in the system, that are in the Exchange. And through this partnership, we are also going to apply a set of capabilities, including policies, remediation tasks, and other things that I'm going to talk about and show you that will allow us to complete the offering of managing devices. So Exchange connector, what is actually what are actually the main tasks that the connector would fulfill? So the Exchange connector would discover the mobile devices which are connected to Exchange. And in that perspective, any device who could actually form a partnership with the Exchange device would be discovered through the Exchange connector. It could manage those devices through setting policies on those specific devices. And it could also apply remediation tasks in terms of wipe, retire, and we're going to see some stuff about that as well. The installation of the connector is pretty straightforward, and I'm going to show you a full process of installing this connector. And once the connector is in place and Windows Intune is operative, the affinity that we're looking for in terms of users and devices and our capability to apply a set of protection measures, a set of discovery measures, inventory management on those devices and on those users is enabled through this connector. In terms of the lifecycle of the connector, so first of all, we need to set up. The downloading the package for the connector on the server that we need to install the connector is done through the Intune console, and we're going to go through this process in a few seconds. Then we need to configure the connector to be authorized by the Exchange server to retrieve and to apply the policies that we want to apply. And then once the connector is installed, we have an ongoing regular cycle as part of Intune in which we can manage the connector, we can actually see its version, we can upgrade it, we can run a full sync, a quick sync, depends on how we want to work with our data, which is in the Exchange. In order to have the Exchange connector actually deployed, there are a set of prerequisites. This is a pretty technical slide in the sense that the prerequisites are pretty straightforward. It's wildly public now in the Intune's documentation, which is available in the beta site. So I'm not going to read all the bullets, but we have a set of prerequisites. And probably one thing that I should mention is that we require the Exchange server to be an Exchange server 2010, Service Pack 1 or later, and the rest is here on the slide. So I'm going to go now into a set of demos. I would like to apologize up front. We are doing this set of demos on a real environment. We're working on our beta environment. So in some perspectives, we're kind of building that the connectivity to the beta environment is fine, and we're working with some 3G connectivity here for our devices. So things may go wrong, but hopefully we'll get it through. So I will start the demo with installing an Exchange connector. So I had the Windows Intune console up and running before the session started. I would need to re-authenticate in order to access the Windows Intune console. So now I have the Windows Intune console, and those of you who were in Dilip and Kim's presentation have already seen this. For those of you who were not, we actually have three major zones in the Intune admin consoles. We have the workspaces, a set of workspaces from which we can go into various tasks of managing our devices, whether they are mobile or PCs. So we can actually do groups, we can do updates, we can implement protection, we can watch alerts, we can manage software download, manage licenses, apply policies, read reports, and do some other stuff, which part of this stuff is do mobile device management. So, and the main zone of the screen is sort of the task zone, or actually shows the status of the system and everything that's going on in the system. And this is kind of a task pane, which is on the right side of the admin console. So if I'm standing now on the mobile device management, I can see that I need to download an Exchange connector. So currently, I have Intune installed. I have an Exchange server as part of my corporate environment, but I don't have yet the association between Windows Intune and the Exchange server. So in order to achieve this association, I would need to download the Exchange connector. So what I'm actually going to do now, I'm going to log into the same machine, or it could be a different machine, but essentially in this demo, it's the same machine that the Exchange server is running on. This is in our beta environment, and I'm going to install on this machine the connector. Now, the connector package, if you remember, I said it a few slides back, the connector package would be downloaded from the Intune console. So I'm actually RDPing into a remote machine on our beta site. I'm connecting again into Intune's admin console. As you remember, mobile device management sits under administration. And I'm downloading the Exchange connector. I have here a set of details that once you guys are going to play with the system, and those of you who will participate in beta, there's a lot of information about installing the connector, learning about various commandlets that can be applied versus the connector. I'm not going to go into all of this right now. I'm just starting to download the Exchange connector. So actually, I'm doing a process of saving the package. I'm not going to continue with this because just to save time, I have already downloaded the packages. But essentially, I have the packages on my device, and I'm just downloading them. So assuming that it happened, and I've downloaded the packages for the connector, actually, I have them here. So I'm just starting the setup now. So there's a privacy statement, naturally. And now I'm installing the connector. I need to have a security association between the connector and the Exchange server. So I need to enter the name of the client access server that I'm going to connect to. If you already have, you have a connector installed because that yours. Why do you have a connector installed? So yeah, the connector that we're installing here is a dedicated connector for Intune. So if you have a connector already, you should probably install another one. Let me just finish, and let's take question. And okay. So the domain that I will use is Fabricam. This is the company that we're using. That's interesting. I did something wrong. Yeah, right. Maybe I got the password wrong. Should be okay now. Nope. Thank you. Yeah, the Xbox is not here. But I'll probably have some problems later on in the presentation, so if you keep helping me, I might take care of an Xbox for you. I will activate a small hack here to allow me an easier life later on in the presentation. So that's all. So essentially now I have installed the connector, and the connector is already there. So I'm going back to Intune, to my console, and here it is. Okay. So if you remember, we had a sort of a warning or an alert that we don't have a connector here. Now we have a connector. We have all the information for the Exchange connector. We have the name of the server, we have the type, we have the version of the connector, and on which machine have we installed the connector. So what I'm doing now is I'm running a full sync. And if you remember the architecture draw that I made, the full sync is actually now associating or actually extracting all the devices from the Exchange server and bringing them into Intune. So this may take some time. I'm going to go on with other demos and presentation, and when we get in a few seconds to the next demo, so we'll be already showing those devices who are in the system. So that was installing a connector. So the next set of demos that we are going to do are demos that are related to policy. So in terms of policy, we actually can talk about two different actions or abilities that we have in terms of policy management. So the first would be to deploy a policy. We can either deploy a recommended policy, or we can do a custom policy. And again, part of the policies were presented already in this morning session. I will try to do something a little bit different here. Essentially, we are able to manage and deploy all the policies that Exchange server would support versus the devices that are connected to the Exchange server. And we apply them through the Intune user interface with a Intune policy model. However, essentially, the policies are the same policies that the Exchange would apply. Setting the device password, applying an encryption requirement, download settings for email, and all the other set of policies that you guys are probably aware of. The other item, or the parallel item that we would like to, that we're doing when we're using policies and applying policies, is tracking compliance. Tracking compliance, whether a certain device or a certain type of device or a certain family of devices are actually compliant with the policies that we've defined. In that perspective, one of the interesting features that we brought into Windows Intune in this release is a policy conflict resolution. We do understand that for some large companies, there may be several administrators. They may be very complex policies that apply to various group of users or to various type of devices, and some of those policies may conflict. So I'm going to show you how Windows Intune is actually addressing the potential problem of policy conflict and allows the IT admin to have an easier life when doing a large-scale deployment and applying policies to a lot of user groups. So I'm going to go now into my Intune console again, and I'll do some policy demos. So last time we've been in the console, we installed the connector, and we ran a full sync. Hopefully, we already have users with devices. So I'm going to my user pane. I have a set of devices for those users. Let's take Ken, for example. Ken is going to be a lead demo person for me today. I'm going to work with Martin as well. Specifically, if I'm looking at the devices that Ken has, so Ken has an iPhone, an iOS. By the way, Ken's iOS is here. We're going to play with it a little bit later on. And Ken has also a computer, which we are not going to show anything about the computer, but later on in the session that we're having in the afternoon, my peers are going to show you some policy deployments for computers as well. I'm going to focus on the mobile devices. So now that I have the users, and now that I have the devices associated with those users, I can actually apply policies. One thing that in order to apply policies, and later on I will also deploy software, and you heard a lot this morning in the keynote, as well as in my peers and Kim and Dilip's presentation, about the capability of associating software policies to groups of users. So in order to be able to demo the policy and the software download, I'm going to create now a group of users with those specific users that I want to target the policies to. So let's try to take Martin. As I said, Martin is my next best friend, who I'm going to use today for policy management. And I'm creating now a group. So let's call this group, I don't know, policy demo. And let's assume I would like to show you the policy of setting a 4-digit password on a Win phone. So I have here Martin in the group. So now I have a group here. The group is called Policy Demo. And I'm going to play now with this group and apply the policy to this group. So I'm going to the Policy tab. This is the Policy tab. And currently, we have no issues with policy, which is perfectly understandable because we haven't done anything with policies. So now we're adding a policy. So when we have the capability to add a mobile security policy, as I mentioned in the slide before, we can create and deploy the policy which has a recommended setting that we could offer. And this should cover most cases. However, there are some cases in which the IT admin would like to create a custom policy. So again, when we're creating a policy, we need to name the policy. I'm just inventing the names. So, and I'm going down to the template. Now, the template would actually support everything that we can do in terms of applying policies. And we see here that we have a minimum password length of 4, which is already enabled. In the next demo, when I'm going to show you some policy conflicts, I'm going to change that value, and I'm going to apply a 4-digit password policy and a 5-digit password policy to the same group of users, and then we will see what happens. But right now, I'm doing a 4-digit policy. I have either capabilities here. I could actually enable the browser, disable the camera, whatever Exchange set of policy is supporting. And we're actually saving the policy. Now Intune asks me if I want to deploy this policy. So, of course, I want to deploy this policy. And it gives me the screen in which he actually asked me to which group I want to deploy the policy. So we've created the group, the policy demo. I'm adding the group to the place that actually shows me all the groups that I'm going to apply the policy to. And now the policy is deployed. Applying a policy actually takes some time because the policy is applied to the Exchange, and from there I will have to sync the device in order to retrieve this policy. So the policy is taking time. I have here the iPhone device, in which I will show you in a second that the policy has been applied. Maybe I go for a second to the phone, just showing you that it doesn't have any policy right now. So this is the email account. So you see here the dynamic tiles of the Windows Phone. I have here the Fabricom email account. You can see that we don't have any policy, and now the process of applying the policy is happening. I'm going back to the console, and I'm going to do a quick process now, which is very similar to the process that I've just did, but I will try to generate a conflict. So I'll just describe you what I'm going to do, and then I'll do it pretty quick so we don't waste any time. So essentially, I'm going to define another group with users. Let's say I would call this group marketing. I'm going to bring one of the users that I have there with the devices into this group. And then I'm going to apply a 4-digit password to this group, and then I'm going to apply a 5-digit password to the same group. Let's assume that those are two administrators that were not coordinated or any other scenario that might happen. And then we'll see how Windows Intune actually helps me identify that I have a conflict and what actually, as an IT admin, I can do in order to solve this conflict. So this is what I'm going to do now. A policy conflict demo. So I'm going back to the users. And I will create another group. Let's call the group marketing. So I'm going to include some members in this group. I'm going back to my friend Ken. So I have created now a group. I can, by the way, the group is marketing. It has Ken inside the group. Ken has 2 devices, as you remember. And now I'm going to apply a policy to this group. As I showed you before, this is the default, right? So I'm not going to change anything here. I'm just saving the policy. And I'm deploying the policy to the marketing group. Now the policy is deployed. Now I'm doing another policy, and this is exactly the conflict that I'm generating. I'm doing another policy that would have a 5-digit password, and let's see how the conflict is being resolved. So I'm just changing the number here to 5, saving the policy. I want to deploy the policy. I'm deploying the policy to the same group of users. And the policy is hopefully deployed. Now let's assume that the admin goes to the overview screen, wants to see what's the situation, what are the new alerts in the system, and suddenly he notices that he has a policy conflict because we have deployed a policy which generated a conflict to the marketing group, and now he has to resolve this policy conflict. So actually, he goes into the alert. He can see that the system has detected the Windows Intune policy conflict. We can actually see the name of the policies that are actually generating the conflict. We have a 4-digit policy, which is contradicting the 5-digit policy. I made a typo there. And the setting that actually is conflicting is a minimum password setting. And I get here all the details on the policy that generated the conflict. And if I go to the lower part of the screen, I get a recommended action. So Windows Intune would actually tell me what do I need to do in order to resolve the policy conflict. So I actually need to erase one of the policies. So I'm going back to all policies. I'm going to the 5-digit policy. I'm just deleting the policy. I want to delete this policy. And that's all. I don't have this policy. And I go back to the overview. And I don't have the conflict. So I had a conflict. I got a warning that I have a conflict. I generated the conflict by mistake. I got a warning that I have a conflict. I solved the conflict, and Windows Intune actually instructed me what do I need to do in order to solve this conflict. Now, going back to the Windows Phone, if you remember the first thing that I've done with Martin, I set up 4-digit policy on the Windows Phone. Let's see if the policy has already been applied. So actually, sorry. Yeah, nobody can see it besides me. Hope I didn't put you guys to sleep. I had Craig telling me that nobody can see anything. So I'm in a Fabricam account now. So now I need to actually sync the account. So actually what we did when we deployed the policy to the Exchange server. Now when I'm syncing the email account on the device, I'm actually retrieving the policy from the Exchange server. So I'm waiting for the device to sync. The device is still syncing. It may take up to, in normal conditions, it may take up to a minute for the device to sync with Exchange. And assuming that the sync with ends successfully, we should have the policy applied. So you see, the sync has terminated. The device has retrieved the policy from the Exchange. And now I need to set a new password. So I'm just setting a new password. And here I am. Now I have a password. If I open again, well, the password should have worked. For some reason, the password isn't. Sorry. Yeah, maybe it will take a few more seconds. Yeah, I have here a guy who is actually looking into the Exchange server, and he's telling me that the policy has applied, but I just want to prove that. Okay, so I'll get back to it later. Next demo. So the next demo that I would like to share with you is actually application management. So that's a very interesting demo because actually I think that this is the third time that we're trying to show this demo today. So Brad had a very brave attempt to show this in the morning. Eventually it succeeded. I'm going to show now the application download, but I'm going to do something which is a little bit more detailed than was shown in the keynote and in the session that happened before this one in the morning session. I'm going to do the full cycle of publishing an application. Like as an IT admin, I have an application that I want my users to consume. I'm going to publish this application. I'm going to upload it into Intune. I'm going to deploy the application to a mobile device. And then I'm going to consume the application from the mobile device. So actually, I have the full cycle of application management. And I'm going to demo this on the iPhone here. Yeah, the policy is still not working here. So first of all, I'm going to go back to my console. And you remember I need to generate a group. After I'm generating a group, I'm going to publish my application and deploy the application to this group. So I'm going to use the same marketing group that I used before. I'm going to go directly into the software tab, go into manage software. I have a set of software items here that I could be using, but I would like to publish a new application. I'm going to use the same application that was used in the keynote, but currently it's not part of the list here. And I'm going to, as an IT admin, I'm going now to do a publishing process in which I'm using an Intune, I'm using an Intune publishing component in order to upload the application and deploy it. So I'm adding a new software. So currently, the Windows Intune software publisher has come up. I need to log in. Now I get a set of options that I could use and apply on my software, and I choose to add a software. I need to select the platform on which I want to add the software. So I will use the iPhone. And now for the iPhone, I need two types of files in order to install an application. I need the IPA and I need the plist in order to set up the file. So I have those. Hopefully, I should have them. No. I think I know what's happened here. I think I might be on the remote. Nope. Yeah, here it is on my desktop. Okay, here it is. I found it. Great. So I just entered the IPA, the setting file, and now I'm entering the manifest. So the publisher of the application is Fabricam, the company that I'm using for the demo. They have generated the application. And they want to publish that to their user. It's an expense approval application. It's going to be deployed to an iOS. The version could be 4.0 or later. Any mobile, let's do it with an iPhone. And then I'm uploading. So now what happens actually is that the software that was sitting on my database is just uploaded into Windows Intune. And once it is uploaded, I can see it in the list. Expense approval IPA. So here it is. So now that I'm going to manage the deployment, I'm going to deploy the software to the marketing team. It is? Let's see. Right. Sorry for that. Okay. So now the software has been deployed to the handset. I'm going to go to my iOS, and hopefully I'll have a better luck than I had with a Windows phone. So I already have in order to access the mobile IW portal, I need to type in a URL. So the URL has already been typed before. I need to sign in with my credentials. And I didn't type right the password. I'm not very accustomed to using iPhone. Okay, it's working. So it says it's working. As I said, we're working on a local 3G network. Might take some time. So actually what you guys are going to see now is the mobile IW portal of Fabricam. So actually the applications have been uploaded to the site. I'm pressing the Get Applications, and here it is. I have the expense approval IPA. I can just open it, read the details, and of course install. And now the application is being installed. Thank you. So going back to the deck,
Thank God for that, Rob.
that was a cycle of application management. Up until now, policies, application management were actually actions that we could take in order to apply stuff on our devices. But what happens if we need to have a remediation? If something happens to the device, God forbid, installed, it has sensitive corporate information, we could actually use Windows Intune to retire the device, which is actually disconnecting the partnership of the specific device with Windows Intune. We can actually wipe the whole device. So in order to prevent from sensitive information to reach to the wrong hands, everything can be done through the console, but not only the console. And in a second, I'll let Craig here show you guys what happens if the end user itself wants to apply remediation, means if something happens to his devices. One more remediation, well, it's sort of not really a remediation, but rather a policy mean, but it's under the remediation set of actions, is the device access rules. As part of the Intune console, we are able to apply a set of device access rules that are applicable to a device family or a certain device model. So if we happen to know about a certain family of devices or certain models that we do not want to allow access for those models into our corporate environment, we can actually define an access rule and apply them to those set of devices. So essentially, Intune will represent or will apply those access rules exactly as the Exchange would have done. It's only that we're doing this as part of the UI of Intune, and we can apply the access rules to the full set of the devices that we're managing from Exchange. I could have shown you the console with a wipe and the device. However, I would like to leave some time for questions and for the next demo that I'm doing. So I'll just skip the device access rules and the wipe device. I'm going to be in the booth right after this session, so anybody who's interested in additional details or questions should probably come over, and I'll be able to demo it in person. So Craig, if my device gets lost, what can I do?
Well, if your device
as
gets
an
lost,
IW,
it's going to hurt, obviously. Now, see, this is where my demo goes wrong.
You should put it here, probably.
Let's see if this works. You never know. Hey, miracles do happen. So this is where I like to unlock my machine by poking my kid in the eyes. It's always a good parenting skill. So there are a number of ways to go if a user loses their device, right? The classic is I call up help desk and I say, oh my God, I lost my device. I have 10,000 social security numbers. I'm really going to get into trouble. And the admin goes and nukes the device. But as part of the whole sort of self-service, we actually allow you to go into the company portal, the end-user portal. And I'll give you a quick show of this right now with our tremendously secure password here that almost nobody is ever going to guess. And so this is what the end user gets on a PC, or Slate device, any kind of other mobile device. Right? When we think about mobile, and you think about, iPhones, and I shouldn't have picked up the iPhone because now someone will get a picture. But if you think, iPhones, Android devices, all the rest of it, that's only really the start. You're going to see more and more as you see, Windows 8 gets finally released and we get more adoption. We want to enable those same set of scenarios. So the users can go and do the same kind of things in this kind of company portal and go do self-service, install their apps, exactly the same stuff that you see in the mobile portal. But the nice thing is that I actually get to go and look at all my devices. So this is not only my phones, my tablets, my PCs. I can look at everything in one place. And of course, if poor old Ken lost his phone, really doesn't want to tell anybody, he's going to keep it quiet. He can actually just kind of send a little self-destruct signal off there, and we'll actually send that wipe instruction off to Exchange. It takes a little while usually to kind of come on through, but then next time the iOS device actually syncs up, in theory.
You want me to try to sync it for you?
Yeah.
Okay.
In theory. All in theory, right? In theory, once Exchange gets that and syncs, that device should be nuked, right? So from an information security standpoint, you're doing much better.
Checking for email.
Gotta say, we have so many Wi-Fi nightmares. This session has been just unbelievable. I think Robbie did a great job actually getting through it all in one piece. You can see how.
So no, we didn't use Wi-Fi eventually. We were counting on
set of hair when we started.
counting on AT&T.
Yeah,
Okay, I think we're done.
all right. So there you go. So you can actually see it end to end.
So you see the device is wiped. It's like turning itself off.
Ken's device is dead. Not the coolest demo in the world, but probably one of the most useful. Well, it's ultimate self-service, exactly. So just to recap, Robbie's gone over the things that you can do with Windows Intune, discovery devices, use the same management console for PCs and mobile devices, nuke a device, allow users to actually self-service those in-house applications. So if you've got an IPA somewhere, you want to get on those phones, you can let the users pull that stuff in. We're going through the on-prem Exchange connector and setting up AD. It's a pretty simple process. So simple, even Robbie can do it. And if you want to know more details, my colleagues are hosting a session today at 4 o'clock, which they go even deeper into some of the technical details about the infrastructure and how Windows Intune is built. And that's at 4:15, I think, today.
Right, and by the way, I have a booth duty right now in the demo room, so if anyone wants to have probably a more deeper conversation, I could do this on the demo.
We've got a booth. Come and see us at the booth. Scattered around, there's a whole bunch of product team people.
One more issue.
One
more issue. We're actually looking for some beta customers for Windows Intune and specifically for the mobile device management. So any one of you who is interested in participating in our beta program, you guys can approach me. You can leave your card with me, and I would try to hook you up with the relevant people and bring you on as part of our beta program. So anybody who finds this interesting and intriguing, don't hesitate and please approach me.
And tucked away down here, you'll find a bunch of little cards that will tell you exactly how to get to the pre-release, www.pre-releasewindowsintune.com. And because we're so confident in our product, we'd like to invite you and bribe you with beer and food later on this evening. We're hoping a little reception at here at Positro Bar and Grill. Run some couple of hours, come by, talk to the product team, we'll answer your questions. If nothing else, you'll get fed and watered, I'm sure.
So we have like a few minutes for questions. If you want to take the questions in a large forum and
finish the housekeeping stuff first, though, Robbie. So as usual, complete your eval stuff. Before you do, just know that Robbie and I love you all deeply. We feel a tremendous connection to you. So bear that in mind. Try not to be too hard on us.
Yeah,
And,
I second Craig.
Yeah. And if you've got any questions, come up and ask us. Thanks, guys.